Hanna-Barbera, a studio that has brought us 60 great years of characters. They're arguably responsible for most of our childhoods, while also shaping most animation networks today. When we look back on Hanna-Barbera, we often ask ourselves, which of their characters was their best? Some of you may say the Flintstones, Johnny Quest, or unsurprisingly, most of all of you will arguably say Scooby-Doo. And why wouldn't you? Scooby-Doo was, for the most part, all of our childhoods, and changed how we saw cartoons from that time period. So with all that being said, is Scooby-Doo my favorite Hanna-Barbera character? No. He was definitely one of my favorite cartoons growing up, ever since I was a little bender, but he wasn't my number one favorite. So, with that being said, who was my favorite Hanna-Barbera character of all time? Well, in order to answer that, we have to go back to the year 1966. 3 years before Scooby-Doo was released, there was another character that made his debut right after Johnny Quest, and changed sci-fi cartoons for years to come. Welcome to the third episode of my character breakdown series, and today we're going to be talking about Thaddeus Batch, aka Space Ghost. Now, of all of the endless lineup of Hanna-Barbera characters, why would Space Ghost be my favorite? Well, simple. He's a superhero, but not just any superhero, a sci-fi one. So seeing this guy beat up all types of creatures and monsters with his sidekicks Jan and Jace along with their monkey Blip was enough to get me invested right off of the bat. But let's stop talking about how I got into the Phantom of Space and get into his character. In the reaches of space, there exists a group of officers that bring all types of criminals to justice. No, not them! In the reaches of space, there exists a group of officers that bring all types of criminals to justice. But of these exceptional officers, there was one named Thaddeus Batch, a young man who was at the top of his game, who had served his corps and was getting pretty much everything he could have ever asked for. He was not only a great officer, but he was married and was about to become a father. But then all of that changed when he was betrayed by his mentor Temple and a group called the RAF, killing his wife and unborn son. Then Temple killed Batch and left him for dead on a planet called the Ghost Planet. There he encountered Solomon, who nursed Thaddeus back to health, and then after, they quickly became good friends. But Batch still wanted vengeance for the death of his family. So he took a ship that Solomon had built to go and bring down Temple. But Thaddeus also grabbed the famous power bands, and from then on, he became the Walking Dead, known as Space Ghost. Now that we're done talking about the backstory of Batch and how we would come to know him as his famous alter ego, let's go ahead and break it down. As I said, Space Ghost is a superhero who protects the galaxy from those who would wish to do it harm. And sure, that may sound very generic, but it's the truth. Now, as we know, any good superhero needs the right superpowers to be cool. So, what's Space Ghost? Well, remember those power bands I mentioned a while back? They are his powers. You see, when Space Ghost wears these bands, he gains normal physical powers you may expect of any other hero, this being super strength, flight, speed, and etc. But these power bands also, when activated, give him an access to an assortment of rays, such as heat, freeze, force, magnet, force field, and so much more. But of course, like any good superhero, Space Ghost also needs sidekicks. But even better, teen sidekicks. Enter the two twins named Jan and Jace, who Batch rescued and took in as his own adoptive son and daughter, putting them through school, but also letting them come to help him out in his missions. But it doesn't stop there. They also have their own pet monkey named Blip, who also gets them out of trouble from time to time. And fun fact, it was actually Jan and Jace who gave Thaddeus his superhero name after a tale that they had heard as kids about a ghost who would take bad children up into space to punish them. Yep, I know. Anyway, with all of that being said, there's one more thing a hero needs, and that is, of course, a good villain to challenge them. And Space Ghost isn't lacking in that area. He has gone toe-to-toe with tons of villains who have given him quite a run. And of these, only 3 stand out. These, of course, being Motar, Brak, and the best for last, his arch-enemy, Zorak. The latter having tons of battles with Space Ghost, and having come the closest to taking him down. Plus, Zorak is arguably the most recognizable foe of Batch. What? You were expecting me to go over every one of Space Ghost's rogues gallery? You know how long we'd be here? Now that we're done talking about the characters, his background, the powers, his sidekicks, and the villains, let's go over the important thing. The impact and accomplishment Space Ghost has had under his bans. While his main show may have only lasted 2 seasons, totaling 42 episodes, in that time, it was watched by millions of fans, and it was crushing the ratings' previous champ, The Beatles. Yes, you heard me right. The Beatles. But after the show had been canceled, it was brought back in 1981 for a new block Hanna-Barbera had put together called Space Stars. But after that, the character would slowly fade into obscurity, only getting minor comics here and there. But then, in 1994, all of that changed with the debut of Cartoon Network's first original show, Space Ghost Coast to Coast. This saw the character retire as a hero to become a talk show host, with his former villains, Motar and Zorak, now being his co-host. Now, most of you know Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and this is actually what made him a household name back in the day, and it's how fans would come to know him. But thanks to this show, he was everywhere on TV. But not only that, it is because of Space Ghost Coast to Coast that we actually have Adult Swim. So I'm just going to end it here and talk about Coast to Coast in a future series review. I promise I'll get to it eventually, just have patience. So, all of this popularity for the character would lead him to get his own comic book in 2005 by DC Comics, which would detail his origins as I explained in the beginning of the video, but as you can also tell by the panels I've been using, this comic is amazing, and I highly recommend you go check it out, as it shows the character as we never got to see him before, while also doing a fantastic job detailing how he would become the legend we all know and love. But, like all things, they must unfortunately come to an end. And so did Space Ghost. His third show had ended, and for 5 years, the character would stay dormant, never to be heard from again. Until 2011, when he made his last TV appearance in Season 3 of Batman Brave and the Bold. In the cold opening to Bold Beginnings, not only did the animation do a great job of recreating the look of the old show with mostly new fluid animation, they also got the late, great Gary Owens to reprise his role as the character. And oh my god, when I first saw this as a teenager, I flipped out. Seeing my 2 favorite heroes team up, this was a dream come true. And whenever I watch it to this day, I still get tears of joy. And once again, I have to give the biggest thank you to James Tucker for making this possible. Thank you, good sir. You are awesome. So, after the return to TV, you would think that the character would naturally make a comeback into mainstream media, right? Right? Unfortunately, no. Not even Batman could spark enough interest to bring Space Ghost back, so once again, it was back to hibernation for Batch. But then, in 2016 and 17, Space Ghost made his return to comics for the first time in 11 years, with Future Quest. Now, if you thought Avengers Infinity War was the most ambitious crossover, then you ain't seen nothing yet. So what is Future Quest, you may ask? Well, without spoiling it, just imagine Infinity War with all of the action Hanna-Barbera characters. Now let's focus on the other one. So, this has been building up for 50 years, and now finally, it has happened. The unthinkable. Space Ghost and Scooby-Doo team up. And wow! Two of my favorite Hanna-Barbera shows teaming up in an adventure together? Sign my ass the hell up! The basic premise of this story is that the gang get to go out into space with the Ghost Crew, but along the way, they are captured by Zorak and Motar, and it's up to Space Ghost to save them. Now, this story may be short, I will admit, but I'll be damn if it wasn't everything I hoped for as a kid. The interactions are gold, the art is spot on, and as you can see for yourself, it just looks great. Please go check it out. And now, we've saved the best for last. And if you thought the other two were crazy, then all I can say is, you ain't seen nothing yet. Space Ghost and Green Lantern. Holy crap, does this kick ass! Basically, we see Space Ghost and Hal get trapped in a time rift, so they have to work together. After they're done beating the crap out of each other, of course. But, guys, there are no words for this. The art is beautiful, the writing is great and does an amazing job of capturing both characters. I really cannot recommend it enough. It is just amazing. You all have to go read it. So, after all is said and done, what makes Space Ghost so special to me? Well, I have to say it's his design for starters. The late Alex Toth did a great job of making the character look simple but epic, all at the same time. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Take the hint! Also, there is something else that I still ask myself to this day. What has kept Space Ghost in my heart, even today? Well, I have to say, it's his care and duty to protect the galaxy and the ones he loves. As he lost his family, but I think he also gained a new one when he became Space Ghost. While he still vowed to keep the peace no matter what, that may sound corny and cheesy, yes, but what's wrong with that? I definitely think that it's important we remember that heroes like Space Ghost can remind us all of what a true hero is supposed to be. So, whatever the case may be, whatever Hanna-Barbera character you prefer, this one will always be close to my heart. So, until then, whatever adventure awaits you, I'll still be here, remembering and continuing to keep your memories alive, my good friend. And hopefully we'll get to see what passes to the next generation. So, if you guys enjoyed that latest character breakdown episode, then please hit that like button. And if you are new to my channel, and you want to stick around, then please hit that subscribe button. But if you also want to stay up to date with all of my videos the minute they drop, hit that little bell notification to be notified when my videos go live. And I like to take this opportunity to thank my friend CarsonGeek for doing this last character breakdown series. The future of this series is unknown, but I do know that they will return one day, and until then, I hope you all enjoyed them. I had fun writing them, and just getting to tell you all why these characters mean a lot to me, and why they're so special to myself as well. So with all of that being said, thank you all so much, and have a good day.